Let's see. Can you hear me? All right. I didn't realize that they're going to play the music for that long, right? I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I should have played the theme track to The Office and like played the entire thing. But well, this does. I do like the band. So, all right. Let's see. All right, don't fail on me. Yes. All right. So, hello everyone. I'm Sid. I just moved to Amsterdam, so I'm new here. I'm still learning the language, and I'm still learning that a citizen is called a burger, right? So before I moved here, they gave me a burger number, and I was like, I don't know what to do with that, but I'll take it, thanks. I'm going to talk about design systems, and as you've already heard, my name is that long thing. Nobody can pronounce it, even in India, where I'm from. Like this second name, never mind. So I just go by Sid, and I work at Code Sandbox. I promise I do work there. Come on. So I thought it'd be a really cool idea to do like a live talk, right? There we go. To do a live talk with everything live, and oh my god, so many images. The keyboard kind of got it right. I'm like shouting, work. Oh my god. Can we do something about that, or like? Oh, 1 Mbps. We hit the mother.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Okay, so now you have to go to the internet thing. Click the button.
Oh, hey, something worked.
So you don't want my thing. I feel.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So Batcave should be there somewhere.
Oh, that's what I call. Okay.
Is there no Batcave?
There's no Batcave.
Holy shit! There you go. Batcave.
There's Batcave.
Iron Man sucks.
Everyone, look away. I mean, if everyone joins this one, then that's where we started.
I wish I had changed it just for now, but it's my actual internet for like 2 years. Ever since the Lego movie. Do you guys remember the Lego movie? That was great. Should I just put it in? Touch it. Touch the computer.
Hey.
Okay, can you go on fast? I was gonna go for a cigarette. I'm glad I did.
What? Somebody just said, yeah, please don't test this internet. That defeats the point.
Can you give a shout out for Vodafone?
We luckily have like an Ethernet cable and a USB-C adapter.
Holy shit!
Wow.
We have an internet cable and a USB-C adapter. You don't need me. Oh my god, bless.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Okay, let's see if this works.
Get that working.
Come on, Sid. I believe in you, man.
Dongle life.
I believe you work for Code Sandbox.
Do I turn this off?
Holy shit! Good luck.
This is why I moved to the Netherlands.
Are you fucking serious? I have 12 megabytes in Berlin. I made a terrible choice, didn't I?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Cool. So let's just do some Zen mode. Oh yeah, so I work at Code Sandbox, and I'm going to use Code Sandbox for my talk because it is live coding, and Code Sandbox is an online editor. While I say it, I'm realizing that was a bad idea, but here we are. But you can use it at home at your nice internet. Cool. So what is a design system even, right? It feels like, I wish I could show you the image, but it doesn't work. So it's like everyone's shouting design system and they won't stop, right? But when we talk about design systems, it's like it's different things for different people. So half the time, like you midway through the conversation, you're like, oh, that's what you mean by design system, right? So I really like this tweet, right, that I've used without permission from Emma, who's one of the speakers. So, and I'm sure you've already read it, it's been there too long, but it's like when you talk to a designer, they're actually talking about a component library, and you talk to a designer and they're talking about like visual components and like sketch library or Figma. And a design system is like all of those and a lot more, right? And when you talk to a design system lead, like one of the 5 people that have that title, they would tell you a completely different story. So design systems are, I like this definition, which is it's a set of principles and patterns, shared and integrated, that define the overall design of a product, right? That sounds a little vague, so Emily Plummer works at GitHub simplified it. She said, it's an ecosystem of tools, guidelines, shared values and principles, which helps the team ship more efficiently and ship consistent design. So that's design system. I don't want to go too much into it. Nate Baldwin made a really cool diagram that you can't see. Oh, I can totally hack this now. While that loads. Come on. There we go. So Nate Baldwin made this very cool diagram. It's like when people talk about design systems, all of this kind of is a part of design system, right? But doesn't have to be. This is another diagram I kind of really like, where they have like building blocks and pattern libraries, and like this is what it makes up, right? But you don't really have to care. Oh, god damn it. Right. This is kind of my favorite definition right now, which is a design system doesn't have to be this end product that you see here, right? It can start with something very small, like just redlining your designs while you do the handoff thing. And then it can grow into a style guide and a UI kit, and then have a visual language for your team, and then make a component library, and then have voice and tone. So it's like a growing thing, right? I like to call it its design system on a spectrum, because it also helps us kind of stop gatekeeping around what a design system even is, right? That's not going to help anyone. And I worked on this team I started with my friend Fernando. We started the design system team at Auth0. And so we learned a bunch, and we actually just picked few of the elements that we could as a really tiny team. And these are the things we picked. So I'm just going to talk about like some of them. I've already spent so much time plugging in, so we're going to skip some of it, right? I did give a talk at Design System London last year, where we talked about the things we picked, why we picked them, and how some of that turned out to be a really bad idea. All right, let's talk component libraries. So because now we're going to guess what slide number is it? Not that one? Oh, there we go. So because we're a React Live conference, I'm going to just talk about the component library aspect of it, because that's the most exciting one to me. And then if there is time, we're probably going to talk about documentation and stuff, probably not. Cool, so the first thing you want to do when you're creating a design system, oh, by the way, wow, now I'm forgetting things. This is me on Twitter, don't follow me. And the notes for this talk are on that URL, so that you can just have everything there. It's like the show notes for this episode. Cool, so let's start at the end. Is this big enough? Holy shit, that's big. All right, so let's say we have an input component. And I'm going to say, enter your username or something. There we go. And of course, it doesn't work because nobody's defined it. And let's create an input component. So this talk is basically pair programming with like 1,000 people. So, all right. Now, for like the sake of this talk, let's just create like a folder that we're calling the component library. I'm going to dump this components, make an input folder so that I can co-locate my documentation also when I write it. And there we go. Cool. First step, import React from React. I promise this talk becomes really interesting really soon. And then you just have an input, right? Which you probably want to return an input. Thank you. And yeah, just pass down all the props. Cool. Export default. Oh, actually, let's not do default. Let's do a named export. All right, perfect. And now, I'm going to create like a component index file here so that I can just like export all of the things from here. Sweet, so now we have an input. Let's go back to our app. I'm going to wrap it in the div so that my Flexbox thing works. There we go, right? And it's like a tiny sad input, right? So you want to style it. So maybe you want to do this where you say input, like give it a class, or you want to tag it so that it doesn't clash with other inputs. So we can do something like this. you can write the styles for this. UI input. Let's see. I want maybe like a 2-pixel border so that it's fat enough, and get like a border color. Green. Oh wow. Green yellow. Really? Let's just stick with green. Right? And then you want like a bunch of padding. So let's say like 4 pixels this way and 8 pixels this way. So you see there's like a ton of design decisions that I've made already, right? I've made all of these decisions that this is what the style looks like. There's like a hidden grid here. There's like 4 pixels, right? If you're on the 4-point grid. And if you're sitting in this talk, right, half of you are thinking, I didn't travel all the way here to look at CSS, right? So let me make you happy by putting it in JS, right? So we're going to use emotion because, 2019. And the input is a styled input. Okay, and yeah, this goes away. Right, let's just make sure it still works. Awesome, right? So now you have a CSS and JS component library. But the thing that we're doing here is that we're kind of hard coding a lot of decisions into the component, right? What is this green? What should be the font size? And then, it gets real inconsistent real fast, right? In fact, if you go to, you can actually just open CSS stats and look at your own company. So I'm gonna shame it because we're gonna fix it soon. Let's see. So we have 19 unique background colors, and like there's a bunch of 27 unique colors, but like honestly, all of these are just black colors, right? We don't need all of them. So that's what happens when you start hard coding. So the thing I want to do is create like a variables file or tokens file. It's what we call it is scandalous, but I'm just going to call it theme. And let's create like a theme file here. And awesome, so I'm going to create a theme, and I'm going to put all my colors inside it. I'm also going to put like a font sizes array. Font sizes, I don't know, like 12, 13, 14, and then you jump, so 16, 18, 24, and then giant things like 36, right? I already wrote like a giant theme file over here, which has pretty colors, and I'm using like this grid, like a incremental thing where you say 100 is the lightest, 900 is the darkest. And this is totally stolen from the design world. They've been doing it for ages now. So let's save it. And this spec, it's like when you're creating a theme file, you do want to follow some standard. So I'm using the system UI theme spec. I really like it. It's pretty cool. They kind of have a bunch of examples on it. The only thing I've changed is I don't make an array of colors. I kind of put them in a scale of sorts, like this one, right? And you don't have to have all the scales on day one. In fact, if you look at the Code Sandbox theme that we're building right now, most of the colors just have 2 or 3, and the rest of them are pink until we decide what to name them. But you want to have like ample spots in between so that more colors always creep up, and you want a slot to fit them without making breaking changes. Cool. So over here now I can import this theme, right? So I can say theme, and then hopefully, Code Sandbox lets you do like the toggle. I'm not going to show off. Theme, and let's see. So now I can say theme.colors, and I get autocomplete, which is awesome. I want the greens, maybe a 700. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks a little light. Let's change it to 800. And I kind of already know that all of these colors are design approved. So if if I check the contrast for accessibility and it says it's a AA, but I want a AAA, I can bump one layer up, and then I should be fine. So that's awesome. Same thing goes for font sizes, a theme, font sizes, and let's say the 2 maybe. 2 is probably too small. I'm going to go for 3, right? And again, all these font sizes are design approved, and yeah, they're going to match all the other things. Pixels, and then padding, you do the same, and then comes things which are slightly more like weird, like you have border 2 pixels. You don't really want to tokenize this and this differently. That doesn't make sense. So what you can do is define extra variables, because it's an object, right? So you can do whatever you want. Tokens dot, let's define some borders. I'm going to say there's a thin border, which is 1 pixel solid, and there's a fat border, which is 2 pixel solid. I'm going to call this thick theme dot borders. Cool. So awesome. Now I can over here say I'm going to use theme.borders.thick, right? And everything still works. So now I don't want to do this because it's I have a point to make later. So you get this, and you instantly have a lot more, the promise of a lot more consistency, because you can't hard code things, you can only pick from the options. And when you code review, it's really easy to kind of just match. Are we introducing a new token? Should we? Should it go into the theme? Is this a one-off case? It makes the conversation a lot more easier with your designers instead of like reviewing and them creating red lines on your designs and that. So that's this. Now, just kind of, I don't really like how there's a lot of noise in this code, right? And emotion and style components, all of the other libraries kind of let you give an object style, right? I've started to prefer a lot more. Like strings are great because you can copy paste from your editor and from like your CSS files, but then you have to change your borders anyways. So I've started doing this where I prefer, come on, object styles. And there's like a great article by Chris Briscardi, who works at Gatsby, and it's in the show notes for this. It's here. There's a link there. You can read it. It's pretty cool. He kind of defends object styles because they're more composable, and kind of like this, right? It makes it slightly more readable, but also you can take this object around and actually just introduce new things, right? This is kind of harder to do in CSS. You can either do CSS variables, but then polyfill and la la la. Objects are just like, they're just JavaScript. Cool, but so this is where I want to introduce style system, which is a pretty cool library by pretty cool people. And the way style system works is you don't really have to define this in every theme, right? So what we can do is we can create a, let me see, in my index, I can like pass the theme in a provider to all my components. So I'm going to import the theme at my app level, and this is just here. Yep. Oh, this is static import. All right, and then I'm going to import, let's see, theme provider from, I think it's emotion theming. Yep. Right, and then I can wrap my entire app in this. Still works, great. And now each of my components actually have the theme. So I don't have to do this. Instead, I can import the CSS prop from, okay, let's see, style system. I think this is called CSS. Yep, everything works. I'm going to wrap my object styles. Right? So nothing changed until then, but now check this out. Because style system already knows you're using this theme, and it's smart enough to know that a border will take from the borders field, I can remove this and just say thick, right? And then in my colors, I can say greens.800, right? It's going to pick the 800 because it knows border color is going to refer to a color. Font size is going to refer to the font size property, right? And now I'm going to reintroduce padding where it also have like tiny utilities like padding X. So that's the X-axis one. I want it to be 8, which is 3 on my scale. Oh, it's actually 2 on my scale. And padding Y is this, right? So one, I really like how pretty this looks, first of all. And second, it's slightly smarter in the sense you're not really talking about pixels or rem units anymore. You're talking about tokens, right? So you say, your designer, and you can have a conversation where you say, just give it green 800, right? There's no hex value exchange, there's no pinging on Slack. Slack actually made they let you preview colors like hex code on Slack because they realize so many people are just sending each other hex codes, which is kind of weird, right? So if like a chat tool has hex color support, we're going the wrong direction, right? Same for font sizes, right? I can say font size 4 looks really big now, so I can just like bump it down a little, right? And it looks really cool. So I'm gonna quickly look at my notes. Okay, we plugged Chris Briscardi. Oh, so yeah, now where are my? Let's see if this still works. Boop, 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 boop. Slides number, I have no idea where we should be. Let's try 15. Oops, 17, 19. Oh god, 20. Ah, there we go. So now things are about to kind of get weird, right? Where's my favorite slide? Oh god. Okay, I'm just gonna write it here. Okay, so I kind of did a bad thing, right? And the rest of this stuff, the tiny time that I've left, is gonna get slightly wild, right? This is like an experimental concept or thing, right? Uh, if if you have to steal one thing from design system, just steal this, right? Just steal tokens, give it to your designer, they'll be super happy. You are super happy because there's no value exchange. You can just talk English, like give it font size 3, right, or the third font size, and then it's just like if you only have to steal one thing from the design system ecosystem, steal tokens, and then everything else is just like tooling and boilerplate. But this is the bomb. Cool. So now, if this works for your team, take it, go home, use it. But if you want something more wild, there are like a bunch of stops on this train. Feel free to get down at any point. Feels comfortable. It's gonna get slightly weird. Okay, with that scary warning out of the way. So I was talking to my team about this approach, right? And they like this much, but then I kind of pushed it and said, what if we put these in like a theme file, right? What if you don't have it here? So I create like a components, right? And start putting these things there, right? So I can say, let's say const components, and yeah, all of this is the input, right? So I'm kind of making a theme like you have themes, but all of them live inside one file, or it's all objects, so you can still divide it into multiple files and combine it, right? And then I want to actually put it in the theme. So I'm going to import components from the file right next to it. And I'm going to just like slap it in here, right? So my theme now has components inside it, which lets me do a really interesting thing. So remember we put our theme in the context. What style system does, it actually passes it to every component that is inside it. So you can actually get your theme here. And now I can just say, yeah, return the theme for input, right? Again, everything's an object, so we have really cool, what do you call it? We have auto-completion and everything. Goddamn commas. Okay, I'm gonna be uncool for a moment because that's just, I can see it nicer. There we go. Right? And you actually get this. And now let me not be so cool anymore. Components, input. Yeah. So this code, what it essentially tells is you're going to get components, pick the input component, and return the styles, right? So now all of your code or all of your components start looking like this, right? And this is like the style part. You can add logic on top of it. But it kind of looks really interesting to me here, right? And this is where, but you're also going to repeat a lot of boilerplate because I'm essentially saying, call it an input, create an input, give it the styles of an input, and then return. Like it's stupid, right? So of course I put it inside something. So it treated the abstract component, like an element thing, right? It's on React UI / primitives, right? And then what this lets you do is you basically create a function. Come on, props, and you can return an element, and you can say this is supposed to be an input, right? This is the HTML tag you render, and then this actually is the component input from your theme. What? It is live coding, so it's also your fault something went wrong. React is not defined, of course. Okay. Oh, the error was right there. Cool, yeah, so you can start doing this. And then if you think about it, now all of my components are just, I'm not even going to put them here. I'm going to start putting them in the root here and say, now I have a form which also returns literally the same thing, just that it's a form element and it has form styles, right? And let's export these. Export. Come on again. Import React from. Right, so I have an input again, and then I can put this in a form. Let's also drag font here. Right? And you see nothing happens because we haven't written the styles yet. But we can start adding styles over here. So I'm going to add a lot of padding to this so that we can see something and then give it a background color of, let's say, gray, I don't know, depending on the projector, a lot more. It should be also grays. Yeah, that makes sense. So now I'm basically creating components here, and I can keep adding a lot of things here. I don't really have to create new files and new, it just makes it slightly more composable. If this feels weird, it is weird. Don't worry about it, right? Let me also add something else like display flex, and I'm going to divide it so it's probably justify content space between. Good, and then I'm going to add a label here. This is the username. I get shamed for this a lot, so I'm going to actually put it. This is the username input, and then the ID here. Username. Accessibility, kids. It's important. All right, so now you kind of have this, and then it gets, because we're using emotion, we have the whole power of a CSS and JS framework. So I can actually go ahead and also do nesting here, and it's all still objects, and say the color for this should be, let's give it something, I don't know, 700, like lighter contrast, slightly more, 800, right? So that's kind of the power of this theme thingy. It is weird, but it's kind of weird in a cool way. The other fact that I'm using objects here also lets me do a lot of tooling in a nicer way, right? Because it's objects, I can import them and play around with them. And I kind of have this file already going where I just imported the theme into a node sandbox you can do that in code sandbox. And I have this utility here, which is called ds_tool/theme CSS, design system tools. And I can run a command here and, whoops, let's create a new one. I can run yarn CSS and keep your eyes on the theme folder, right? So I'm going to run yarn CSS, and because it's objects, I can read them and actually spit out CSS files so that all of the projects that don't use CSS and JS in my team/company, especially the marketing pages, I still get all the variables if I want, and I get all of these styles, right? And these are parse styles. Oh, this I screwed up. But I get all the parse styles. I'm sure I called it fat. I didn't think of the joke earlier. Oh well. So, and now that you have a CSS file, you can do something fun, which is I'm just going to use this sandbox, which has the CSS file. I'm going to copy this and take it back to my original thingy. And actually, I'm going to go put it in public HTML. Let's see. Link, rels, style sheet, href. I hope that's the right syntax. It's been a while. And then let's hide all of this garbage. There we go. Yes. And now I can actually just write, oh, I already have it. I can use a form. I can use the CSS generated from my theme file, right? So it's essentially, oh, that didn't work great. So label username. Goddamn, thanks. Oh, there we go, nice. So the nice part about this is I'm kind of using the same styles across projects, right? And maybe I run it in watch mode or dev mode. I don't know what I called it, but dev mode, it is called watch mode. And use this across sandboxes, and which I'm trying to simulate is across projects, because you might have different projects which share the same styles. And I feel like the authoring experience of this is a lot better than writing 2 blocks of CSS and sharing them. So you kind of create a theme object, and it can be used with style system for your React components and also spit out CSS for your HTML, right? Or any other projects that you have. So that's, if you're cringing by now, feel free to kind of just pick your sweet spot in all the weird things we did and stop there. I highly recommend the tokens one. Let's see, we did this, I showed this off, I also did this, awesome. Now, the only thing is left is to put in this goddamn slide number 20. that wasn't it, right? Oh, there we go. Nice. So, do I have another? Yes. So a design system talk is not complete unless I say this, which is design system is for people, right? So even though I really love the weird experimentation I have going on, the thing that makes sense is like you want the tooling to enable the people who actually use it, right? So the solution has to be something that your entire team feels comfortable with and everyone knows what's going on, right? That's also a reason I don't use TypeScript here because, oh God, nobody has time to learn all of that. So, but this is like a super important quote by Gina, who's like the mother of design systems. She said, what makes a design system truly living, thriving and successful are the people, right? So get the people parts right, and then you're set for success. You can find the notes for this talk over here at this URL. I hope it's big enough. And yeah, if you want more weird takes like this, I'm on Twitter. Thank you.